mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about episodes 1 and 2 of the new Amazon Prime series, The Peripheral. I'm here to talk about this in non-spoilery fashion as I watch these first 2 episodes, and the vibe here, as I do with the start of any new show that I cover, is to just kind of give you guys an overall perspective on what these first 2 episodes are like, or first 1 episode, however many a show might release, without giving you too much information that might spoil you or deter from your ability to enjoy those episodes. So, I want to give you guys an idea of what this show is about, what I thought of it, what I liked about it, what I didn't like, and then you can take that information and glean whether or not it's something that you're going to want to watch. But I'm going to start by saying it's something I'm going to fucking watch because I really enjoyed this show, man. I'm going to get into it, but I want to start by first doing 2 things. One, I want to remind you all, especially if those of you who might be new to this channel, to subscribe to my... to follow me on social media at One Mic Network on Twitter. Search One Mic on Facebook. I'm imploring you all to do this because I'm going to be using social media a lot more. Going to be a lot more active on there. Going to be sharing news, stuff I might not make videos for, but that I feel like you all should know. And I think it's important to be able to get all that stuff. So follow me on there. If you shoot me a message, I'll follow you back. It's really not a thing where it's like, oh, I'm just trying to get a bunch of followers. It really is about the fact that I just feel like it's a good avenue to give you guys news and to share updates without having to make a video for it. And then also I want to give a shout out to my patrons. If you're interested in the Patreon, there's a video called Major Announcement in the video section that details everything about the Patreon, and there's a link to the Patreon in the episode description. So shout out to Delvin Cox, Brett Factual, Dez, Justin Smith-Williams, Brian Turner, Dancing Lights, and Margaret Moffett. Now that I've got that out of the way, let's talk about this fucking show, man, because it's very rare that I watch something and I'm like as enthusiastic about it as I was about this. I really enjoyed these first 2 episodes. I'm super excited to see the rest of this season. And I'm just going to tell you guys up front, spoiler alert, I fully intend on giving this full coverage immediately after watching these first 2 episodes. And I watched these first 2 episodes twice. That's how much I liked these first 2 episodes. But I'm going to get started talking about it. And again, I'm not going to spoil anything, so you can feel free to watch the whole video and know that I'm not going to spoil anything that you're going to see in these first 2 episodes should you decide to watch it. But, you're going to hear the names Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy tied to this show, who, if you don't already know, they're the people behind Westworld, a very popular HBO show that I, among many others, accuse of being way too far up its own ass, trying to be more confusing, being more interested in being confusing and tricking the audience than telling a coherent story. But in this case, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are the executive producers, among many others, among several executive producers. The show's creator is actually a guy named Scott Smith, who, as far as I can tell, he doesn't really have too much experience as far as like creating television shows. He's written a couple of novels that have been turned into films, and he's also a credited writer on, I think, most, if not all, of the 8 episodes that this season plans to run. But he hasn't really made a show before, and his seeming lack of experience in creating a television show is pretty impressive given how much I fucking enjoyed these first 2 episodes of this show. It was interesting, it was creative, it was exciting, it was cool, it was fun. Yes, it can be a tad bit difficult to follow at times, but, I've read a few reviewers, they call this show confusing and they compare it to Westworld, and I don't agree with that, at least not yet. I've been very, vocal about my displeasure with Westworld and how it shifted into this mindset of like, we don't want anybody on Reddit to be able to guess what's going to happen. So we're going to make this shit as confusing and as difficult as possible to follow. And fuck telling a coherent story. We don't give a shit. The goal is to confuse the audience. I hate that about Westworld. I've been very vocal about it. But I don't feel that here. Yes, you need to pay closer attention, and yes, there are a lot of things that I don't want to say are revealed, but that we see during the course of these first 2 episodes that do not make sense and that we do not have answers for it just yet. But confusing and convoluted, I don't think so. it's one of those things where like you watch it and you know, like, okay, I know this is a thing. I don't know why yet, but I know that the show is gonna answer this question for me just because of how they presented it. And that specific criticism of it being convoluted and confusing and all this kind of stuff, it feels rooted in that desire to go see Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are at it again with more of this bullshit from Westworld, rather than being rooted in actual reality. Like, it feels like if I'm being honest, it feels like a rather like remedial criticism that tells me that the reviewers just really weren't paying close enough attention to the show, because they already had, just like Westworld, they already had that lame ass remedial ass critique already queued up. So when they watched it and it was confusing, they just went, I knew it. Whereas like if you actually paid attention, it's really not incredibly difficult to follow. There's just things that they present that they haven't answered yet. But to that point, let's talk about the show. So it stars Chloe Grace Moretz, who I was first introduced to in the movie Kick-Ass. At least I believe that was where I first was introduced to her. And Jack Rayner, who some of you may know from Midsommar. They star as a brother and sister pair named Flynn and Burton Fisher. They're both really good at like VR video games. And in the show is primarily set in the year 2032, which is only 10 years from now. More like 9. And there are some notable differences in this world, even though it's only 10 years from now. So I'm going to read some of those differences before I go back to talking about Flynn and Burton. So Flynn seems to work at what I can only call like a Kinko's for 3D printing. It seems like you could like make an order like online or something, and then you go to this shop and you could pick it up out of these 3D printers. That seems to be where she works, and that also seems to be like I feel like we're going to end up in that place where that's the kind of thing that happens. Prescription drugs are wildly expensive in this town in 2032. Which honestly feels like a natural progression from how things are right now. But Flynn and Burton's mother is sick with some illness that at this point in the show, or at this point in her illness, it struck her blind. She can't see. And the medication she needs cost $1,000 per pill. I shit you not. Per fucking pill. So that's how expensive prescription drugs are in 2032, at least what their mother needs. Homeland Security seems to be playing a lot more of a direct role in citizens' lives on this show. Apparently they flag withdrawals of over $1,000. I don't know what that's going to be about. And when there's a character within the show who has their VR game hacked. And that character assumes that it was Homeland Security that was behind it. And I wondered why they assumed that. So, we know that Homeland Security we know that they're monitoring withdrawals, and we know that whatever else it is that they do enough for this guy to immediately go, oh, my game was hacked, must be Homeland Security. So that's an interesting thing as well. And VR is really fucking advanced, man. Apparently, in 2032, rich people will hire gamers to kind of like level up their characters for them. And that really just goes to show you that there's like no ceiling to elitism in this country. But Burton is ex-military. So since he's got real life experience at being a badass, he does a really good job with these video games, and he gets hired to do this leveling up thing by rich people fairly regularly. But if I had one complaint about these first 2 episodes, it would be that the show the episode 1 specifically starts off kind of portraying Burton as kind of like a dumb fuck, who like a fuck up, kind of stupid, goofy, aloof, just not bumbling. Like I feel like they try to make him look like a dumb fuck, and they make Flynn look like the sensible person. But towards the end of episode 1, they shift him into being a complete and total fucking badass, which is cool. And I think that kind of does a disservice. They did the character a disservice by kind of letting Flynn kind of paint him in this light of being kind of a dumb fuck at the beginning. But like I said, that's nitpicking. That's just one complaint. But like for most of episode 1, I felt like Flynn was a fuck up who was kind of in over his head. Burton was a fuck up who was in over his head. And once you learn the extent of his military experience, you learn that he is not a fuck up by any means. Flynn, however, despite not being military, is actually even better at these VR video games than Burton is, but she has to play with Burton's avatar because these rich fucks won't hire you if they think that you're a woman. But, to that, all I have to say to that is the more things change, the more they stay the same. But Flynn has made Burton's avatar pretty well known. So Burton gets sent this new device to kind of test out a new version of VR. And Flynn tries it out because, of course, Flynn's the one who actually built up Burton's avatar into being such a well-known avatar. Flynn's the one that tries this new device out, and this is where our story kind of takes off. I'm not going to talk too much about the story, but I'm going to give you a little bit. Flynn ends up in a VR world that feels less like playing a video game and more like inhabiting another body altogether. She's like, I'm in a body, I can see things, I can feel things, I can touch things. This feels real to me. And when she returns to the real world after a pretty harrowing experience within this game, some pretty dangerous people are sent after her and her family, and she and Burton have to figure out what the fuck is going on, both within this game and within their own real lives. And that's really the best I can do at describing a plot that has like 100 times more depth than what I just described. That's pretty much the best I can do without spoiling it. So why did I like this show so much? In addition to having a really interesting, complex, and multi-layered story, the show also has really great supporting characters as well. There's a character named Connor on here. He's played by Eli Gorey. Eli Gorey is virtually unrecognizable from his most recent role, I believe his most recent role, as Cassius Clay in One Night in Miami, if you saw that. Connor has one arm and no legs. And we find out he used to be part of Burton's military crew, but he lost his legs and arm under some mysterious circumstances that we only know to be mysterious. We don't really know what happened yet. We get a little bit of an inkling, but that's one of the many mysteries that this show is going to have to reveal at some point. And because of this, he's kind of isolated himself from Burton and his military crew. He's a drunk now. And that's really who he is. He lives the life of a shut-in. But he lives the life of a shut-in, and he's a complete and total drunk, except for the brief moments where he's a complete and total fucking badass. And Connor is a great character. Like, I'm sure he gets multiple moments of being a badass in these first 2 episodes, one in each episode. And if they're going to give me a moment of Connor badass in each of these 8 episodes, I'm all for it. And speaking of badasses, Burton has an entire crew of friends, like I said, who he was in the military with, and they are all badasses as well. And when people come for him and Flynn after Flynn gets out of this game, it produces one of the coolest and most exciting action sequences that I've seen all year. Burton's friend Reese in particular is pretty cool in this scene and in these episodes as well. But it's the beginning of episode 2. Episode 1 ends on something of a cliffhanger, and episode 2 picks up with this action sequence that is just, it was so fucking cool, man. I was watching that completely blown away. I'm like, this is exciting, exhilarating. It was great. So there's also something that took place, which we don't know what it is yet, between Flynn, Burton, and this guy named Corbell Pickett. He seems to kind of be like the badass of this town. He has henchmen who kind of work for him. One of which he punishes in an incredibly dope and brutally violent scene in one of these episodes. He's played by Louis Hertham. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. We all would recognize him from Westworld. Like I mentioned, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are executive producers. Apparently, they brought him along with them. He plays a number of roles in Westworld, but I will just say, if you haven't watched Westworld, he plays, I guess the basic version of him will be he plays the main character, Dolores' father, Peter Abernathy. She also has a past with a cop in the town. His name's Tommy Constantine. The cop is. He's presently engaged to another woman, and we don't know what happened. We only know that something happened because Tommy seems to think that Flynn and Burton are holding a grudge against him and his fiance over whatever this is. And they also they being Flynn and Tommy, have something of an awkward moment at an ATM that again leads me to believe that they had something going on And then there's also a more solid evidence that there is feelings there, especially on Flynn's side of things, but we don't know what happened yet. But again, another interesting mystery that this show is going to have to answer at some point. Then you have characters within this VR world that Flynn enters that are super interesting as well. The main two, the most interesting I think of these two are Wilf Netherton and Alita West. Wilf Netherton is played by Gary Carr, who I know best from The Deuce. And Alita West is played by Charlotte Riley, who I know best from season 2 of Peaky Blinders. Unfortunately, the less I tell you about them, the better. If I give you much detail on these two, we're going to get into spoiler territory. And the stuff that I'm not telling you about this VR world is the meat of the spoiler stuff. So I can't really get into too much detail on that. But let me just tell you, it's completely fucking satisfying and really entertaining. So, yeah, I guess, like, you know, all that to say, like, you got a really interesting, unique, exciting story, great action sequences, great characters, past that are interesting that we have yet to learn about that I think are going to have very interesting explanations, tie-ins between these multiple worlds. It all makes for like a great sci-fi show that I absolutely plan on covering, starting with episode 3 this Friday. So if you're a fan of this channel and you respect my opinion, you're going to go turn on Amazon Prime right now and watch this show. I thought these first 2 episodes are really fucking dope. I plan on covering it full time. So if you're a fan of this channel, you're going to want to watch it and follow it along with me. So that's all I got. I will see you guys, not next week, later this week on Friday for episode 3. And until then, peace.